Maybe we'll have music.
Right on time. Let's get started. Again, thank you guys so much for being here on time. You're gonna have some people kind of sprinkling in, so don't mind them. Before we get started, this workshop was probably like the hardest workshop that I put together, and here's the reason why. Because throughout this workshop, you're going to notice we're going to go through different age groups, different phases of life, okay? And each phase of life, in my opinion, deserves its own makeover. So just spending about 45 minutes to an hour together, we're hitting surface level. So I'm going to hit like the big parts, the big conversation of each age group. And I ask that you guys just be present with us today and just really think about what I'm talking about today, okay? Emily's gonna chime in because as you guys know, we're expecting a little baby, and even throughout chiropractic school and all throughout my career, something that I'm so passionate about is taking care of kids, taking care of moms, because you know, more and more in recent years, parents are starting to lose their choice, lose their ability to raise their children like the way that we want to, okay? Whether it be government guidelines or two, it just lack of knowledge, okay? We just don't talk about this stuff, okay? So everything that I'm gonna say today, you're gonna hear my heart today, guys. I'm gonna be honest with you. But everything that I say is very calculated. Everything's data-based, everything's research-based. And I'm never gonna tell you to do something, okay? I'm just gonna give you all the facts that I know that dictates our decision and how we're gonna raise our children and how honestly take care of patients, the practice members here. Because I'm sure you guys already know this by now. You've been here for years or you just started. You notice that we take care of you guys like your guys are our own family members. And our recommendation is always gonna be the same no matter who it is. Does that make sense? Great, let's go and get started. So this is why we do the things that we do, and it's our mission to truly empower everyone to live life naturally, okay? Because would you guys agree that you were born with everything that you needed? Yeah, God didn't make broken parts, right? No matter how much the medical model sometimes say, we can take this organ out, we can take this gland out, you need this medication to be who you are, right? I don't agree with that, right? In this office, we draw a line in the sand and we say, okay, your natural state is to be healthy. Your natural state is to thrive. If you're not, right, what is keeping you from getting to that God-given potential, okay? So this is how we're going to view this whole workshop. Does that make sense? Now, I'm going to refer back to my notes quite a bit, so you guys forgive me because I have a lot of information I want to share with you guys, but this is the big problem here, chronic disease among children. Okay, it's gotten so bad that 1 out of 4 children or adolescents in the United States have at least one chronic health condition. Just think about that for a second, okay? For a second. A quarter of the kids in the United States have some type of chronic condition. And it's not just the small ailments like getting colds, getting GI issues, or getting allergies, right? Chronic conditions, right? So when we have sick children, what do they become over time? Sick adults. So these are the chronic diseases that kids have today, and ignore the pictures here because something went wrong with the slides, but they're just gonna be blobs. But anyways, these are the top chronic diseases among children today, and I'm gonna give you guys some numbers and statistics here. 6.2 million kids have asthma. 350,000 kids have diabetes. 1 out of 5 children are considered obese. 5.3 million children have diagnosed with ADHD. Okay?
Can you say that one again?
5.3 million. And we're gonna talk about that a lot in just a moment. Depression. So depending on the statistic that you look at right now, suicide is the 2nd or 3rd cause of death among adolescents today. And do you feel like that trend is getting better or worse? It's getting worse at a rapid rate, and we're going to talk about why that might be the case. Okay, and malnourishment. We live in this world, this crazy world where we're well-fed, yet we're malnourished. I'm sure you guys see that, right? We have some teachers in here, we have some people that are parents. So anything that we talk about today, you know, I just want to guess that you guys know this. There's no magic pill that's going to get your family well, that's going to get your kids well. And right? We're going to talk about every age group. How can we even prevent this from happening in the first place? Okay? And before we talk about kids, we have to talk about the mom. Health starts in the womb. Okay? And there's this concept called the genetic wealth. Okay, genetic wealth. So everything that you do that contributes to your health as a mom or the dad, you're building up your genetic wealth. Okay? And you get to pass that on to your children and your children's children. So if you view it like that, you know, how much wealth do you want to accumulate in your family line, right? How is that going to dictate what kind of food that you put into your body, what kind of exercises that you do, right? What kind of products that you buy and how to take care of yourself, right? And everything that we talk about today, we can talk about it between the 5 essentials, right? If you guys have been a patient here for a long time, we talk about 5 essentials all the time, right? So it is obvious that what you put into your body matters. It's obvious that when you exercise, it's going to keep not just you healthy, right? But also there's a direct correlation between the fitness level of the mom and the fitness level of the baby as it grows up. Does that make sense? The desire to exercise and move, it goes from the mom to the child, okay? So the more you exercise throughout the pregnancy, more your child is going to become who they are. They're going to become the type of person that will actually be active. Is that making sense? Yes. Right? You're building their genetic wealth, yes. Right? Even like the mindset portion of the 5 essentials, right? Every time you get anxious as a mom, every time you get fearful, every time you get nervous, your baby feels it too, right? Because those emotions are dictated by your hormones, right? So just like when a drug is administered into the mom, the baby you find it in the baby's blood within 3 minutes, right? It's the same thing happens even with your emotions. So learning how to take care of your mindset and the positive attitude really, really matters, right? And let's talk about the chiropractic portion of it. Now, if you guys have been a practice member here for a long time, you'll notice that there's a lot of pregnant patients that walk in and out of these doors. And why is that the case? You'll hear these patients say, you know, I had pregnancy before chiropractic and I had pregnancy after chiropractic, and it's not even comparable, right? And this is not just coming from a state of comfort, right? It goes a little bit deeper than that. So, you know, if you've been pregnant before, I haven't, right? But I see it all the time. What does it feel like, or what are you told that it should feel like? What do you experience? Painful, uncomfortable, right? What else? Long,
like a labor process,
right?
Pain everywhere.
Pain everywhere. Yeah, you're exactly right. So does chiropractic help with that thing? Absolutely does. But when it comes to pregnancy, there's 3 different components that even OB/GYNs talk about, not just chiropractic. It's the power, the passage, and the passenger. And let me break that down for a second. Okay, let's talk about the power. So your uterus, as it's stretching, it is a big muscle, and it needs to be powerful enough to get that baby into position, and then again down the vaginal canal to the birthing process, right? Because for the ladies in the room, were you guys created to give birth?
Yes.
Absolutely you were. But we live in this world that, hey, you need this intervention, you need this shot, you need this drug to give birth on your back, right? Which is completely false, right? So remember, with chiropractic, we're trying to influence your neurology, your nervous system, which controls everything in your body, right? So is it important that the nerves that's literally feeding your uterus, that's building your child without a single conscious thought, is it important for those nerves to be communicating well? Absolutely. So what we know to be true is when we adjust the pregnant patients or the pregnant moms, there's better power and coordination that goes to the uterus, and the innate intelligence that's literally forming your baby, that's making the kidney, that's making your heart, right, from 2 cells is better coordinated. Is that making sense? Right? Next, the passage. We talked about power, but we gotta talk about the passage. So as you go throughout pregnancy, your pelvis shifts quite a bit, and it's there for a purpose, right? You need to make room for the baby, right? But when you have a misalignment or subluxation, your pelvis literally rotates, it constricts down on the canal that the baby's gonna come through, right? So what can that cause? You you guys ever heard of breech position, right? When the baby's not turning enough.
Yeah.
And the baby's not able to get into the proper position because there might be different contractions of the uterine wall on one side compared to the other. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Right? Because the more room you have, the better your innate intelligence can do the things that it needs to do and position your baby for that birthing, for that labor. Is that making sense? Now we gotta talk about the passenger. All right? The baby knows exactly what to do, right? Because do you need to think about the baby slowly turning head down, right, as it grows up? No, right? The baby knows exactly what to do, and I'm experiencing with Emily right now, where the baby was head up, and all of a sudden it would start moving around a lot. It was very active several weeks ago, and the baby turned head down, right? But the baby cannot do that, right, if all those things are not in check, the power of passage, right? That's why it's so important, right? And what we've seen through chiropractic care is that it shortens labor time by 25 to 31%. When I was researching this stuff, I told Emily, you're welcome. You married well, right? And when it comes to breech cases, now we're not adjusting the pregnant patient to flip the baby. That's not what we're trying to do. Only thing we're trying to do, okay, let's remove the interference and let the body do the work, okay? Because when the baby's not in proper position, what are you getting pushed to do? For what? Meds, C-section induction, right? Right, because after 34 weeks, if that baby's not turning, they're like, there's red alarms going off, right? What we know to be true is that when you're under chiropractic care, 92% of breech position resolve, 92%. But without chiropractic, after 34 weeks, when you're in a breech position, meaning the baby sideways or up with your legs up, only 9% of them gets resolved by itself without chiropractic care. Can you guys imagine how massive that is, right? Right, so that's why whenever we hear a family member, you get pregnant, whatever, it's like, hey, are you under chiropractic care? I don't care if it's here or elsewhere. It is that important, right? Because here's a big problem now in this country. C-section rates.
Sorry, can I interject before you
Yes.
get too far? Sorry. This is about the genetic wealth. So a lot of you guys are maybe not in the baby growing stages, but more of the children raising stages. When we went to go see my midwife, very first appointment, she was asking me not only how I was raised, but how my mother was raised and how his parents were raised, because that has a big influence. So like how my mom's health was obviously when she carried me, and his mom, but also like what kind of food did she eat? What was her lifestyle like? Did she have any trauma? So like a lot of that, even if you're like, I'm done having kids, that still is heavily impacted, because eventually maybe your kids are gonna have kids. And that's going to be impacting like basically your grandchildren and your great grandchildren. So for that.
So let's talk about C-section for a second. The World Health Organization says the ideal rate of C-section should be about 10 to 15% of women. Okay? If you look at different studies, they say around 5%. Because is C-section necessary sometimes? Is there time and place? Absolutely, right? It's life-saving. But what does it say? Current C-section rate is 31.8%. That's in the United States, okay? In Georgia, our #1 birthing hospital was this Northside Hospital in Atlanta. The rate is 41% C-section, okay? So what does that mean? About half of the women that walks into the hospital because they're told that, hey, you need a hospital to give birth, half of them, almost half, is going to get their abdomen cut open because they're told, hey, you can't give birth without these things and you're on a clock. That's the world that we live in right now. That's why it's so important to learn about this stuff, okay? Look at this map here. This is a great thing to take a picture of, ratings.leapfroggroup.org. You can get any statistics about hospital throughout this group, and it's not biased, it's facts. So when you look at the C-section delivery rates here, can you guys see the Southeast, how much darker that is? That's almost a culture now in this country, right? Because not just C-section being emergencies, you're told, hey, at 40 weeks, after 40 weeks, a day over, the baby's gonna be under distress. So you need to schedule induction. God forbid that your due date is near the holidays and your primary doctor is about to go on vacation. What do? What do they recommend? Hey, let's get you induced in a couple weeks earlier. Yes, If you guys want to see me, if you guys want me to be at your birth, you got to schedule this induction, right? Or some people say, hey, I want to control my maternity leave, right? Let's schedule during this day. I want them to have this birthday. But you have no idea how traumatic that operation is for not just the mom, right? But for the baby, for the child. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Because listen to this, Leapfrog group here, I was doing a lot of research with this, and I checked off these categories. What hospitals within the 100-mile radius of this clinic meets the standard for C-sections, episiotomy, that's when they literally cut your vaginal canal to get the baby out, right? Screen the newborns for jaundice, and what hospital meets the standard for preventing blood clots in women who need a C-section, right? Within the 100-mile radius, and it says 9 facilities meet the standard, okay? Just to give you context, there's over 90 hospitals in the 100-mile radius. What does a 100-mile radius look like? This is where we are, okay? This is Huntsville, Chattanooga, Augusta is down there. Birmingham's right here. You guys see the scale of this, right? It is all fear, fear, fear. You need a doctor to give birth, which is absolutely not true, okay? Now let's go into this, all right? We're gonna go to age group, newborns, infants. Here's the milestones. If you guys wanna take pictures of this, we're gonna have milestones at each category. At birth to 1 year, they should be able to smile, right? They should be able to roll over by themselves. They start to sit up by themselves. They should be able to crawl and make a few steps. It's gonna be critical to do that by age 1, right? Neurodevelopmentally wise. So we're gonna talk about a couple of things that are really critical to do, right? That's something to think about, and a couple of things to maybe avoid, okay? And the number one thing here is if you can breastfeed, it's so critical to breastfeed. I don't know if you guys knew this, but depending on what your child needs, the consistency and the content in your breast milk actually changes. So you see these studies where the mom will breastfeed and they'll pump and they'll see 1 breast milk in the bottle here, and when the child is sick and their pH level, their saliva changes, the breast milk will change within a couple of days, and the color will be different, the consistency would be different, because the breastfeeding is so important, because you're literally, as a mom, handing over your immune system to that child. All the antibodies, does that make sense? And the first bit of breast milk is called colostrum, right? It's that thicker stuff. That is so critical for the baby to get right after the birthing process, because it starts to help your body, help the baby's body produce vitamin K on its own. On its own, that's important. Why? Because what are you taught to give your baby a shot of?
Vitamin K.
Vitamin K, right? Vitamin K, right? And here's another thing that's infuriating to me. After you give birth in the hospital, and you have these narcotics in your bloodstream because you were told you need epidurals, all these different things, right? What do you feel like after the drugs wear off? Nauseous, nauseated, right? And there's this drug that they always give to the pregnant patients to control the nausea. How that drug works is that it starts to dry up your stomach acid, okay? Guess what the side effect is? What else does it dry up? Dries up your breast milk. And it's impossible to breastfeed after that. You guys see it? And you were just robbed of the opportunity to feed your child like it was designed to, naturally, right? Emily's mom, right? She was premature, C-section, right?
Yeah, it was with my brother though.
Yeah.
She had to fight.
Yeah, she had to fight, and she was given all these drugs without knowing the consequences. And it wasn't until afterwards when she was trying to breastfeed and thought, no, you can't do that right now with that drug.
No, what they said was, oh, my brother was born at, I think, 32 weeks, and I was like 33 and a half or 34. And they were like, oh, we thought he was so early you wouldn't want to breastfeed. And that makes sense. And so, yeah, they dried her up without her permission, without her knowing. And so she had to fight to make sure that she could do that with me.
Now, why is it so important that you guys are here? To learn about all these conversations. because you might not be in that phase, or you might be having a newborn, etc. Right? But you're going to know someone or run across someone, and maybe it could be life-saving, and maybe you could save that generation from going through the sick care. Is that making sense, everyone? Okay, so natural immunity is so and so important. In this age group, we gotta talk about vaccines too. Okay? It's not my place to tell you to do one thing or tell you another. I'm going to show you data and statistics so that you can have this conversation in the first place. Okay? So vaccine hesitancy has been the #1 concern for parents when you look at the statistics and when you look at surveys. And it's for right reasons, and here's the reason why. Today's kids receive over 70 doses of vaccine before they are 18. 70 doses, okay? And even the federal government has stated that these vaccines could be unavoidably unsafe, okay? And here's the shocking part. Okay, 70 before 18, okay, fine, right? Half of those 70 doses are administered before 15 months of their life, okay? So as the baby is growing, getting exposed to bacteria, dirt, whatever, the air, etc., and they're building their immune system, right? They're vulnerable, right? So people would say all the time, hey, listen, I was fully vaccinated. Parents will say all the time, hey, my kids were fully vaccinated, they're fine. Okay, great, good for you, right? I'm glad. But what if those kids are not fine? What about those kids who were damaged by those vaccines, right? Because once that chemical, there's so many different toxins inside those vials, you can even read the labels on the vial and it'll tell you. There's formaldehyde, there's heavy metals, right? There's all these chemicals that could be a neurotoxin, and you're dumping over 30 of them into your baby before their immune system is set, right? So what could that cause, right? Could that cause autoimmune conditions that the body starts to attack itself? Absolutely can. Could it cause neurodevelopment delays, like they can't walk, they miss their milestones, they can't talk, right? You have no idea, guys. We've been taking care of a lot of neurodevelopmental kids, right? If you guys have been a patient for a long time, you'll notice that these kids are coming through, and you see it more and more, right? And you have no idea when we sit down into the back room and have a consultation and talk with the parents, hey, when did you notice the difference in your child, right? They'll say, well, around 15, 16 months. They started not looking at me. They started not smiling. They started not making noise anymore, right? And it's countless. It's one after another. It's so predictable now, okay? 30 years ago, instead of being 70 doses before 18, it used to be 23. So why did it triple over the last 30 years? And let's talk about why. Because 30 years ago, there was a law that passed that completely protected the doctors and these pharmaceutical companies from any liabilities for injury, right? Because they'll tell you, hey, 1 out of so-and-so will be damaged or have an allergic reaction to this vaccine. People say all the time, well, that could be life-saving, right? But what about the kids that you literally ruined their life because you didn't get proper consent or education, right? What are you gonna do about them? And they have a legally full protection over any type of damage, and the parents cannot do anything about it. Again, and guess what happened? Go ahead.
Sorry. Another resource, if you're just interested in learning about like what's in the inserts, the ingredients and all of that for vaccines, is an Instagram account. The name is Just the Inserts. So Just the Inserts. And this person goes through, I followed them for several years now, probably found them around COVID time. And they will go through all the different vaccines, and they'll basically do all the work for you, like highlight, okay, these are the ingredients, this is what this means, these are, could be side effects or anything like that. So just a resource if you're interested.
And over the last 30 years, when we look at who profited over this stuff and who benefited, is the pharmaceutical companies. How much is it? Their profit margin used to be about $750 million 30 years ago. And it's projected to be over $70 billion next year. Okay? So I want to show you guys, again, I want to be factual and database here. This is from Cornell, and this is the law that gives them full protection over if your child was damaged or had an allergic reaction. Okay? What does it say? No vaccine manufacturer shall be liable in a civil action for damage arising from vaccine-related injuries or deaths from 1988. Even if the injury or death was resulted from the side effects that are unavoidable, even though the vaccine was properly prepared. Direct warnings here. No manufacturer be liable, same thing, associated with the administration of vaccine after 1988 solely due to the manufacturer's failure to provide direct warning to the injured party. So they don't have to tell you the side effects, the consequences that could happen, right? Now, why do I tell you guys this? Am I telling you to do one thing already? No. I want you guys to have the opportunity to have this conversation or question if a healthcare professional was trying to do this to you, your family, or your loved ones. Okay? So don't ever forget this law here. So correlation versus causation. When you look at the trends, guys, after the law passed over the last 30 years, what has increased is this chronic disease of neurodevelopmental issues and autoimmune conditions by 400%. And when you look at the autism rates, this is something to really pay attention to. 1995, 1 in 1,000 kids were diagnosed with autism. As the rates go on, in 2020, what does it say? 1 out of how many? 36. Sometimes this can become so overwhelming, it's such a number, right, that you forget 36 kids is literally a classroom.
Yeah.
Right? One kid in every single classroom could be diagnosed with this. And could vaccine be causing? It could, right? Correlation, causation, I don't know. I'm gonna let you guys be the decider there, right? But everything points to the right direction. Is that making sense? So, what I really encourage you guys to do is to please educate yourself and do your research, okay? Are you gonna find this on Google? Unfortunately not, right? There's nonprofits, there's organizations, Facebook groups where parents are literally looking for help and talking about this stuff, and read through it and make the best decision that's for you and your family, okay? Let's move on. So during this age group, you're introducing food. After breastfeeding, what are you introducing them, right? Oftentimes, this is the first time they get sugar. Oftentimes, this is the first time they get processed food, okay? And especially those little jars that's full of that mush, right, baby food. And a lot of them says organic, a lot of them says all these labeling, but there was a study done that looked at 168 most popular baby foods on the shelf and found that 1 out of 4 had heavy metals in them. Okay, so what does that mean? If you have the time, make time. Insist on making it at home. Get some blueberries, get some vegetables, get some whole food. You can mash it up if you want to, but if you do it at home, you're gonna get the nutrition that's actually gonna be giving life to the baby instead of becoming a neurotoxin or even gut health issues, okay? This is the big problem now, right? Who's a parent here? Yeah. Is this a daily struggle? Yeah, absolutely. We live in a digital.
Shouldn't be for babies.
I know,
It
but
should not be a daily struggle.
what does it say?
Yeah, babies are just.
Research shows that screen time before 18 months can negatively impact reading, memory, sleep, attention, and language development. And here's a shocking statistic for you. The recent survey showed that 92% of 1-year-olds have at least used the device so far.
That's true.
Okay? And what kind of impact is that having? Damage to the screen time. Because we don't realize this stuff because it's so insidious. It just kind of happens, right? There's this hormone called dopamine that's flowing through your body, and that's the hormone of drive, right? That makes you hit your goals and make you want to go do something to achieve a certain award. Does that make sense? Every time you scroll on social media, you get a little dopamine spike and a dopamine spike, right? Every time you watch a fun movie or video on that tablet with full of colors, right? That's designed specifically to get your kids hooked, right? And get you addicted to it. Listen, I'm guilty, right? Especially during those nights when I'm tired, I get them on Instagram and I lose 30 minutes doom scrolling, right? It all happens to us. But every time we do that, that dopamine spikes and our baseline of dopamine crashes. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen kids that are just like searching for that hit of that scroll or that, hey, I need the phone, where's your phone, right? that is literally becoming embedded into their brain, right? Yeah, exactly. You literally become addicted to it, like you want a hit of that cocaine because it's the same dopamine spike. You guys hearing me so far?
It's just once a hit.
Yes. So, how can you fix this? I don't know if we can, right? Because there's more digital things in the world, but the best action, in my opinion, is that you lead by example. Children follow the parents, right? On average, adults spend about 10 hours on their phone, on their screen daily, right? 10 hours, right? So look at your screen time. Maybe you need to do a little check on yourself. I need to do a check on myself, right? So maybe delete the social media, delete those apps that's hooking you, and you'll realize how much more time that you have. And again, kids are always watching, right? So anything that we progress onto this workshop here is gonna build on the next, and you'll see a similar theme, okay? Let's talk about chiropractic care for young babies. People are surprised when I say, hey, I just adjusted a 3-day-old baby the other day, right? And they oftentimes come back with, well, they don't complain of pain, you know? What do you mean a baby needs chiropractic care, right? Because of this. Let me show you the research. Dr. Gutmann, he's a German physician. He studied 1,000 newborn babies shortly after birth, and what does it say? He discovered that over 80% of those infants had suffered the trauma to the cervical spine or the neck, right? And where did those nerves go to? Especially at the brainstem. Everything vital and automatic. Blood pressure, heartbeat, respiratory rate, how you perceive the world, allergies, right? What does it say? After that 7 out of 1,000 infant babies will be injured at birth. This next study, after looking at 100 newborns between 6 to 72 hours old, they noticed that 99% of them had at least one strain on the spinobasilar strain. Spinobasilar area is the area that literally anchors your brain into your skull. Does that make any sense? And everything else, 91 has cervical restrictions, 80 of them has sacral-base restrictions, which is your lower back. So the birthing process is your first trauma, your first opportunity to get a subluxation that's going to literally choke the life out of the organs on the other side. Okay? That's why we check babies. Because you have no idea what that adjustment is going to impact later on. You have no idea what you're going to prevent. Does that make sense? That's why when Ayan, after she gave birth, 3 days later, she's like, hey, I need to get this baby adjusted, right? That's why when Emily gives birth to our daughter, guess when I'm gonna check the baby, right? As soon as possible, thank goodness, right? And the last thing, what about the moms? Right, statistics show 25 to 34% of women report birth as being traumatic, as a bad experience. I wonder why. We talked about that a couple slides ago, right? So what are the warning signs that babies have a damage or subluxations in the neck, right? Inability to latch, right? They fail at breastfeeding, right? When the I just went to a little workshop or seminar that introduced us to what we call cranial work, little bones in the head. And when those are not in proper alignment, the baby won't be able to move the mouth and the tongue the way it needs to, so it can't latch on. And you feel like they have like tongue tie, right? When they actually really don't. It's a neurological issue, right? Favoring one side. You ever seen a baby in the car seat? They're always like this and rotate to one side, head tilt, right? That's a sign of subluxation, right? Because why? Because when they get to normal, it's painful, it's uncomfortable. They can't express that. Is that making sense? Reflux, constipation. So one of the first things that subluxation do is it slows down everything automatic, okay? You're thinking digestion causing constipation. You're thinking about ear infections because the drainage is not happening. Does that make sense? Respiratory distress, why? Because right here at the brainstem where the atlas is, right, that's where everything vital and automatic is controlled. Recurrent ear infections, weak reflexes, and poor coordination, right? At the brainstem here again, the brainstem has a 3D print of where your body is in space, right? But when you have that subluxation, right, that information is incorrect, right? So their posture starts to get deviated, right? They won't be able to crawl and hit those milestones that they need to, okay? And people say all the time, okay, I don't want to bring my baby in. We hear this from husbands a lot, the husbands that are not here, right? It's always the moms that say, I want to take care of my child, I want to do this for the health. Oftentimes husbands are sitting at home, they're scared about chiropractic, and they're fearful that they're going to hurt their baby, right? Then what does it say? Let's compare this, guys. So you're willing to go to the medical doctor and put about 56 to 69 pounds of pressure on that baby's neck using the forceps. The regular birth, right? Normal spontaneous delivery puts in 29 pounds of pressure on your baby's neck, right? If you ever go to the gym and grab that 25-pound plate, how heavy that is, think about strapping that onto the baby's neck and the head, right? Because what are they taught to do? Grab the head, pull, rotate, and extend, right? The vacuum device, it can go from 4 pounds all the way up to 32, and at 70 pounds it pops off. So have you ever seen a baby at the birthing video? Because we watch it a lot during our seminars on taking care of babies, and you see the doctor literally put a plunger on that baby's head and start pulling. And I didn't know this, but I see them get popped off all the time, right? They put over 70 pounds of pressure on that baby's neck, right? What does it say over here? The middle is the average amount of force it takes to adjust the baby, 1.7 pounds, right? Max, it will cost 4.4 pounds of pressure. So oftentimes, moms ask us, did you do anything, right? It just looks like you're massaging that baby's neck. Yeah, that's all it needs, that's all it takes, right? And you're literally setting them up for success. All right, let's talk about toddlers. These are the milestones they should be hitting. Okay, they're slowly starting to get a little more independent, they're moving more, and they're learning how to communicate more, okay? And one thing that's not on here is that you'll notice that their fine motor patterns are starting to come in. They're starting to grab onto stuff, okay? Again, right, the brainstem, right? Also, this is where the fine motor control starts. If they're not hitting those marks, again, that's exactly what we start to check, right? This is, there's two different things that we need to think about in toddlers is food and toys during this time, right? Right around this time, people say, hey, my kid's being a really picky eater right now, right? And during that age group, I ask that you be patient, okay? Because what does it say? Research shows it takes about 11 tries for a child to accept new food, right? They might be picky, but you just keep on pressing on, okay? Some of the things that you can do is hide the nutrition dense food, like in smoothies, right? Blend up the kale, blend up the spinach, make it into a popsicle, right? Put some blueberries, some fruit in there, make it sweet, right? Hide that stuff in there, you know? You can use zucchini noodles, like squash noodles, you know, the noodlers, right? And I absolutely love that stuff. Hide that stuff in there, you know? Because the first moment that the baby tastes sugar, right? This is when addiction starts, right? Because what we know to be true is sugar is more addictive than cocaine, right? To the brain. Again, that's that dopamine spike, right? So we're trying to restrict that as much as possible as you can help it. Let's talk about toys. There was a study done that showed that 1 out of 3 toys that were tested contain some type of toxic chemicals that's listed up here, formaldehyde, which is used to preserve bodies after you pass, right? BPA, PVC, lead. So what you're really looking for here is trying to avoid as much plastics as possible. If you're forced to use plastic, don't have it sitting in your car. Don't have it sitting near the window where the sun can overheat it, because plastic is very porous. And what do? They start putting this stuff in their mouth, and what we know to be true is things like PVC, BPA is a neurotoxin, okay, or it's an endocrine disruptor. It acts like a hormone inside that baby, and it will cause all kind of damages. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, marketers and companies have gained traction that we don't like BPA, right? You see BPA-free stuff all the time. But there's this new chemical that they formulated, it's called BPS, and they're not legally obligated to put that on their labels, okay? So if when in doubt, I would just use solid wood toys, or if you are buying a toy, don't be afraid to email these companies like, hey, is there this stuff in it? And they have to make sure that they tell you. Or if it's sketchy, just don't vote with your money. Does that make sense? Okay, let's move on to preschoolers. So at this age here, again, they're starting to get more independent. Their vocabulary is starting to get bigger. They're using proper grammar, right? They're actually able to form sentences together. And again, this is the biggest issue in this age group too, screen time, right? What does that say? Children between ages of 2 and 5 watch how many hours of TV? 32 hours of TV per week. It's like a full-time job. That's why they have babies there. Okay? And what research is showing now, guys, this is from 2020, that if you do have any screen time, it should be capped to 1 hour at the most. And please keep it educational. I know that's hard, but that's the goal. That's the goal, okay? Because when it comes to this age group, they're kind of starting to learn their personality, right? If you've seen these age group come by, they are, you can tell how they're gonna be, right? And at this time, you have no idea how many kids in that age group start having social media. And they're automatically learning how the world should be through their eyes. Does that make sense? So as they get dissatisfied with their lifestyle, it's crazy how kids think. You'll see this age group start to get, they become loners. They want to go into solitude, right? Their interaction goes down. And then the mental disorders start to skyrocket at this age group already, okay? And when it comes to screen time, there's something called blue light. I'm sure you guys heard that before. I'm sure you guys heard that blue light keeps you awake, right? But what blue light really does is that it starts to stimulate the part of the brain that causes more stimulation, and over time puts that brain into more of a fight or flight dominant state. And your brain doesn't know if you're there because you're literally about to fight a bear, or it's there because you're literally watching something. All it knows is that I need to prepare this body for battle. So it starts to not prioritize digestion, metabolism, detoxifying, sleep quality, because it says I don't need that for survival right now. Do you think it gets symptomatic at this age? Rarely. It doesn't become symptomatic until you're older. Yes, you're exactly right, okay?
There's, can I
go ahead.
chime in?
Yes,
There's
please do.
also new research coming that's, I've been seeing in my line of work that more children are being diagnosed with myopia because of screen time, all before like age 3. So
Right.
they're already, like it's just becoming a trend now with so many children having eye issues because
Exactly.
of screens being so close to their faces from
Yeah,
such an early age.
that's me. Because when you grow up in Korea, right, you don't play sports as much, but esports is huge. Video games. Right? I grew up, I remember my youngest memory was me being in what we call PC room, playing video games, right? And when you look at I actually looked this up, when you look at the statistic of how many ethnicities, right? When you look at different ethnicities, how many of them have glasses at a young age and how many don't, guess who's the winner, right? Asian people, and I think it's not a mistake. It's not a mistake. This is important right here, and a lot of this is simple, guys, but we're getting farther and farther away from the natural order of things, right? What's happening to recess? What's happening to playtime? It's getting taken away. Only about 5% of children meet the daily exercise recommendation, and this is why it's so important, guys. Not only is this helping build their muscles and their bone density at this age, but this is when they start to learn social interaction. This is when they look at facial expression.
Problem-solving skills.
Exactly right. They're learning body language, right? And when they learn their best in this tribal setting, when they're actually doing stuff together. When you take that away, right, guess what happens to their confidence, their socialization skills? What happened during COVID, right? What happened to those kids that went through that during COVID?
Isolated.
You talk to any teachers, you talk about any owners, right? They always say the same thing. These kids don't know how to communicate with one another.
But you
Right.
see a trend too, like the kids that I have, I teach 3rd grade, and they started the year online in kindergarten. So, and I see the trend
It's,
of
we're
having
still
social
feeling the
skills.
effects of it
Oh,
from-
100%.
Like, and some of it's even worse right
But,
now.
yes.
Especially like developmental delays
Yeah.
are worse now than what we were seeing during COVID. Like during COVID, it was like social emotional, anxiety, isolation, all that kind of stuff.
That's
Now we're
behavior.
seeing true developmental delays occurring in children from that portion, and it was because they weren't getting out and moving their bodies and socializing and doing those things. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. You see
And
that,
this
right?
is 3-4 years later.
Yeah.
It's worse now.
All they know is that time frame. It's a little
Yeah.
while.
That's all they know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this, our kids are sick, guys, and this room should be packed with parents, professionals that need to hear this stuff. Because what do you hear, and we just had this conversation, what are the parents like? Do they know how to take care of this, right? No, right? Because she owns this the daycare center, right? Little Minds First, literally across the street, and we just had this conversation about parents don't know what to do with this stuff, right? So this is so important. And what I love about this age group is if you can build habits early, again, they look at you. If you can build habits here, it starts to become who they are. I'm the type of person that goes outside. I'm the type of person that actually interacts with other people. Unless they become, hey, I'm the type of person I just want to be behind my screen.
Yeah.
Right? Preschoolers need 11 to 13 hours of sleep per night, right? I know I didn't really get this stuff, guys. I want to stay up, right? Because when you're sleeping, that's when you're healing. When you're sleeping, this is when your brain starts to engrave those memories. When you're sleeping, this is when your body can actually process the things that you went through that day, right? And it's so critical. So, you know, as much as I'm repeating this stuff, you know, about an hour or two before it's their bedtime, screen needs to be off. I don't care if you're wearing blue light glasses, I don't care if the iPhone turns yellow, right? It needs to be off. Go ahead.
Can you say that a time again? How many?
Yeah. So, DJ.
Please say it again.
Again, it stimulates that part of the brain for wakefulness. Does that make sense?
For everyone.
Yeah, for everyone.
everyone.
Yeah, me too. I need a mirror right here. Screen's off.
Exactly.
Anyways, we think that just because we want to improve our nighttime, right, sleep habits, we only focus on nighttime routine, right? But what matters even more is that sleep cycle happens in the morning, right? So you have this special receptors and neurons in your eyes that it reacts to sunlight, right? So spending a lot of time outside in the morning and getting that sunlight exposure, even if it's overcast outside, is critical to set that natural alarm clock for your toddler or your preschooler to set them up for success at night, okay? Let's move on. School age children, 5 to 12. So again, they're describing their feelings now, right? If they feel comfortable. They're starting to have this desire to be accepted and liked, right? Again, you're thinking about social media here for a second, the dangers of it. And again, longer attention spans and increases their independence. So when it comes to school age kids, I think about book bags, right? And I think about lunches. Book bags and lunches. So let's really talk about that just for a second. So it's incredible to me when how heavy book bags are now, right? I was going through school and we had lockers, right? We had textbooks, so we'll rent them out. And by now, I thought all the big textbooks would be kind of away, right? Even some schools have lockers, but after COVID, they say, hey, you can't use lockers anymore, right? So what happens? About 8,000 injuries happen because of backpacks in this age group, okay? The good rule of thumb is 10 to 15%. Here's what that means, is that book bag, you should weigh it regularly, right? That book bag should be no more than about 10 to 15% of their body weight. Of their body weight. That's so critical. Okay, make sure you're using 2 straps. Don't be like me trying to be cool, right? With the 1 strapper, right? Heavier items closer to the back, again, for the leverage. Make sure it's high and tight, like this picture here. And this is one that's important here. Especially like for me, I was like the person that was shoved down quizzes and the bad grades at the bottom of the book bag, right? Make sure you guys clean that stuff out because that stuff adds up, right? But again, just weigh it, right? Because you'd be surprised how many people come back and say, I didn't realize they were carrying 30 pounds on their back, right? They're literally rucking. All right, let's move on. So let's talk about obesity. So again, we talked about 1 in 5 children now are considered obese, right? And some statistics, recent statistics showing that 1 out of 4, right? So that statistic's not slowing down. And again, sick children become sick adults, right? So if you're considered obese at this age group, what studies have shown, these long 10, 20-year studies, is that you have 1 out of 10 that loses that weight when they become an adult. But only about 10% of these children actually recover and get their health back. Isn't that scary?
Yes.
And then all the things that come along with it. you know,
Exactly.
Mental
Yeah.
anxiety and stress. And,
Yeah, heart disease,
Heart
cancer,
disease.
diabetes.
yeah.
So let's look at lunches for a second. It baffles me. in schools that you have these dishes with, hey, this much should be from grains, this should be from dairy, and it's completely false. It's so outdated, right? When you look at lunches, is how can I feed as many kids as possible with the smallest budget,
Oh, yeah.
right? And some of the things that we just can't avoid are the chemicals in these foods, the damaged oils, the cheap canola oils, right? The rapeseed oil that they use to cook, and colors, right? The food dyes, right? And food dyes have been known to exacerbate ADHD symptoms, right? ADD symptoms, they can't focus, especially the reds and the blues and the yellows, which is in everything. And what I can tell you is that during holidays like Valentine's Day, St. Patty's Day, right? When kids come in here, they're all over the place, right? And when you ask them why, right? And parents always say, well, they got candy, right? They're giving out this stuff during these holidays, right? And it's all fun, right? There's birthdays to be celebrated, and it's a good thing to celebrate, yet you can literally see the difference after these things. So what is the best thing to do is, again, I think teaching them the rights and the wrongs in the house, right? That way that just becomes who they are. You know, hey, I'm not gonna eat this stuff. Or packing the lunches, right? Basing it with protein, the fruits and the fats, right? It doesn't have to be anything complicated, right? Here's how I love to meal prep. Pick 3 meats, proteins, 3 fruits or vegetables, and 3 fats, right? You can interchange them and have 27 different meals using that method, right? It doesn't have to be difficult, right? But that's so important.
There's some schools too that serve on styrofoam and use plastic
Yeah, oh my goodness.
cutlery. So that's what the kids are eating off of
That's
every
us.
day too.
Yeah, I
They throw
remember.
everything away.
They throw everything
They
away.
won't wash it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember when I came to America and I was 8 and I was in elementary school, and in Korea we used to get stainless steel platters, and we used to get like Whole Foods, and we would get lunch from styrofoam dishes that's pre-made. And I remember eating pizza one day, those square pieces, right? And then I lifted up and it was a fresh pizza, and there was a melted mark, right? That's literally right? So all the styrene and the styrofoam is again, it's getting into the food, right? And the number one thing that we asked about supplements is like, okay, what's the most important ones, right? And these are the ones that I'm gonna buy for my child. Is number one, we know that multivitamin is so important, right? But it's so scary, the supplement industry is not regulated at all, right? So when you look at the labels of these gummy vitamins, these children vitamins, there's again the colors, right? There's all these additives, there's all these sugars that's gonna exacerbate the problem that you wanna get eliminated. Does that make sense? So these are the healthy chewables, multivitamins, and I want to talk about the probiotics for a second. And I'm sure you guys heard this before, where over 70% of your immune system is housed in your gut, okay? So in Korea, even in other cultures outside the US, you eat a lot of fermented foods, right? So you're getting all these healthy gut bacteria that's literally setting you up for success, right? I remember I never got sick. It was never an issue. My classmates never got sick. But do you eat any fermented foods here growing up? The answer is no. So you have all these gut problems, autoimmune conditions, and even the hormone serotonin that produces happiness, the sense of peace, right? Again, over 80% of that is produced from your gut, right? That's why if you can pick 2 different supplements for your kids to take, it'll be a multivitamin and a probiotic that's actually has an array of bacteria that's going to help this ecosystem grow in your gut, okay? Let's move on to teenagers. She said,
We're there.
All right, so teenagers, guys, all the things that you've been doing from birth to now is expressing yourself. They're independent, right? They're setting goals now. This is the one that I really want to pause because it looks simple, but are they setting goals to be liked? Are they setting goals to get more likes? You know, are they setting goals or to be healthier, right? To be at more peace, right? Increased expression of feelings and sense of right or wrong. So again, we talked about in the first couple slides, prevention is key. So all the things that got here, right, is expressing itself. So again, it all starts from the home, right? Teens right now live in the most stressful world, and no other generation is ever going to be able to relate to the amount of stress, right? They're constantly bombarded by social media. They're constantly, the 15-year-olds today are completely different to when I was 15 years old, right? Because they're starting to grow up at such a rapid rate because they're seeing the world through the lens of their phone, right? And I want to take a moment here to talk about antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication for a second, okay? The SSRIs, the Lexapros, the Prozac, right? And the, what's the other, Zoloft. And I was shocked when I saw this. It says 37% of teenagers between 12 and 18 has some sort of antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication. 37%.
Yep.
So if you imagine your family, your classroom, or whoever you take care of, more than a third of those kids are dealing with some type of anxiety, depression. They say they feel like it's being medicated, right? And then numbers go skyrocketing to about 50% when it comes to things like Xanax or things like Adderall, right? There was a shortage of Adderall in the recent years. Have you guys heard about that? It's being so overprescribed. You go to your primary and you say, I'm not feeling like myself, and what did they write you? One of those things. And there was this massive study done, and it was published in 2022. It was a 10-year study looking at these children that had some type of SSRIs or Adderall, excuse me, just SSRIs. And what it showed is that it was taking these drugs was associated with twofold risk of cardiovascular disease, okay? And another thing is that all-cause mortality, meaning just dying from anything, doubled when you're taking these drugs. And the dangerous part about these drugs is it literally changes the chemistry of your brain to make you feel, and make you have this illusion that you're happy. And the longer that you're on it, I'm sorry?
No, sorry, just.
Yeah. And the longer you're on it, the more you become dependent on it. And you start to hear the language, I need it.
Yeah.
Right? Listen, I never had to take that drug, but I see so many people in it, right? And it's something that you suffer by yourself between the years, right? But there is a better way, right? It's because you don't need a drug to make you feel a certain type of way, right? That's so important. And something that contributes to this is fast food, right? 1 out of 3 teenagers say they have some type of fast food every single day, right? And just because you have fast metabolism during that time, right, you can look good and eat all this stuff, but that doesn't mean the rest of your body's getting compromised, right? Especially when you look at the brain, again, always going back to the nervous system here, your brain is made out of fat and cholesterol. Whatever you eat literally becomes you, right? So when you have all these damaged fats, all these rancid fats from all these fast food, guess what happens? Your nervous system, you can't live your life and express life the way that it was intended. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Right? So limiting that as much as you can. Again, you can't stop them, but teaching them the way. Again, I'm gonna fly through this. I've got 2 more slides here. This is very important here. Why? Anytime you guys come up to us, the team, and say, hey, so-and-so is sick, so-and-so is dealing with an injury, so-and-so is dealing with anything, right? What do we say? Right? Have they gotten adjusted, right? And people laugh at this stuff, right? But when you look at this, right? When you have pressure on your nervous system that literally coordinates anything in your body, right? Nothing's gonna be as effective, right? Because we are giving you guys the recommendations that we would do if you guys are our family members, right? Anytime Emily has a problem, anytime our friends have a problem, we adjust it, we put our hands on them. Because your body's designed to heal. Is that making sense? But you have these C-sections, the forceps, the vacuums that's causing interference from birth, and the interference that light movement, right? There's this concept coming out, it's a disease of confinement. Disease of confinement. You guys have heard of it, seems like. So the baby goes from a car seat, right, to a carrier, to a stroller, to this bouncer. There's all this stuff. They're strapped in all the time. And as they're growing up, they have to move, learn how to crawl, learn how to feel things out for their brain to literally get developed. That is so important, right? But they're confined from movement since they're born, right? And listen, I'm probably gonna get it. You know, you guys pray for me when I have this baby. I just probably want to like put it away for a little bit and have some time. But when you put them on a especially the bouncers at an early age, those bones are not quite weight bearing.
Yeah.
Right.
Bumbo seats are horrible too.
Yeah, exactly, right? Bumbo seats. And it can cause literally a fracture in their lower spine. You don't recognize it until it gets arthritic decades later, right? We call that a spondy, right? So, this is the most important part right here, okay? So, when it comes to chiropractic and the adjustment, you know, I was the biggest skeptic of chiropractic before I actually became one, right? Because I went to a chiropractor that looked at me and said, hey, okay, come back when you're hurt again. You know, so I get this concept this idea that chiropractors are just pain doctors. And I'm sure maybe some of you guys have actually been to one like that. And when my mother-in-law came on to me years down the road and said, hey, you gotta see my chiropractor, he cured my allergies, right? I got this reaction, I was arrogant, I was like, don't listen to your mom. That's not how chiropractic works, right? But what we really know to be true now is that with chiropractic, if we minimize it to just pain and aches and pains and getting to feel good, right, we're minimizing it so much. That's the side effect of chiropractic. Do we adjust you to get you out of pain? No. Do we adjust you to get rid of symptoms? The answer is no, right? The power of the adjustment, when we adjust you on the table, just know that we're impacting your prefrontal cortex, right? Your prefrontal cortex is literally what makes you a human being. It is the house where executive functions. It is where your intelligence is. It's where your decision making is. It's where your emotion guarding is, right? It's the part of the brain that shuts off that fight or flight signal, the emotional part of the brain, right? Now, when your prefrontal cortex is shut off because of subluxations, stresses of life, right? Especially if you imagine the children now, they're only living in this primitive, right, the brain that is reacting to the world. Can you see that when a subluxated child is left alone, they're the kid that won't sit still. They're the type of kids who can't focus in classrooms. They're the type of kids that's bouncing off the walls, right? You can't calm them down, right? Or as they grow up, right, their fight or flight signal is so much and is so draining, right? They start to seclude themselves, right? They start to perceive the world as more dangerous, more anxious, more fearful, right? Now their life seems so dull, they feel alone, right? And they start to need these medications to feel like themselves again, right? Can you see a subluxated child is not going to have just behavioral issues, their emotional response is going to be off, and their intelligence, right? They can't express themselves the way that they need to, right? This is why when we see children come in with neurodevelopmental issues, right? Autism, whatever else on the spectrum, you see this child who's experiencing their life in this fight or flight state, and they're not perceiving the world accurately as God intended. And we get them adjusted and free of their interference. And what you see is this child becoming their most authentic self, and that's the most beautiful thing. They're sitting there talking to us. They're putting words together where they haven't in years, right? You see this child who's starting to thrive in school, who doesn't need these medications again, right? Because, like I said, your brain doesn't know if you're in that fight or flight state because of subluxation, stresses of life, or you're literally about to be in battle. All it knows, okay, let's go. I'm ready to go, right? And then these things start to suffer. That's how important it is. Is that making sense? Right? So when we say, have your kid gotten adjusted, right? Have your spouse been adjusted? Or have they been gotten checked? Right? That's why. That's where we are coming from. Right? Yes, we want to see more people. Every time I go to Publix, every time I go to Walmart, there's always a line at the pharmacy. Right? There should be a line out this door every single day. Right? Because what other therapies or drugs can influence this without any side effects? It's zero. Nothing else other than the chiropractic adjustment. Right? So when you come in, right, and you say, hey, I'm hurt here, we hear you, but just think deeper. We're trying to connect you so that you can experience life as God intended, as authentic as possible. Is that making sense, everyone?
Absolutely.
Great. that's it. So let's talk about action steps here. Upcoming events. I love that we have a mixture of practice members here who just started, people who've been here for years. Treat these workshops like continuing educations, right? Because the doctors here, you know, we have to get a certain amount of credits to keep our license, right? Every time we do these workshops, especially this one for me, we put our heart and soul into this. We always learn something new, right? I can guarantee you're gonna learn something new too. And over the years, as you go come into more workshops, and you look back, you're like, man, look how far we've come, right? That's, so we have our next workshop coming up. It's called Chemical Combat. What date is it?
Monday, April 8th.
On Monday, April 8th. Yeah,
I think it's in 3
so
weeks.
the time sheet's right there. Action steps here, guys. Just like I talked about, it all starts from home. You know, so if you look at this like, hey, whatever I do is going to influence my children. Whatever I do is going to influence our genetic wealth and how our grandchildren's health is going to be. I hope that influences you to get healthier for yourself. Okay, so that's my prayer for you guys. And that's it. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you so
If you guys want to grab some supplements, if you guys want to sign up for the workshop, make sure you guys do that on the way out. All right.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.